Hello, everybody. It's Friday night in New Orleans, or nearby in New Orleans, and this is the Supernatural Substation on the United Public Radio Network. Your last stop. I used to say this, the last stop before the unknown. Maybe this is the last stop into the unknown. Anyway, it's Friday. It's the 9th of June, and you're into the first 30 with me, Aline Costanio, and my co-host, Bernadine LeBlanc.
In the wings.
In the wings, waiting with her questions on a yellow notepad. I don't know that, but I'm just assuming. Never assume, because there's an ass in assume. That's what they always said. Don't assume. Anyway, those of you who actually have been listening to us and who listen in our archives, you know that for the past few weeks, or the past several weeks, we try to use the first 30 minutes for talking about paranormal topics and, stuff like that. Just topics, types of hauntings, whatever, just general paranormal. And it was yesterday when I saw Destination America. It really should change its name, to Destination Paranormal, because it is solid paranormal programming until like 3 in the morning when there's like some infomercials. And early in the morning they might have a cooking show or something, but it's solid. I mean, so much that you just like, God, but how many more can there be? But actually, the Ghost Brothers, as an aside, they just renewed, and it actually is a new season of their show on Destination America. So I thought that was cool,
Yeah,
So,
I like them.
Yeah, I like them. They're hilarious. But anyway, yesterday they were running one of these marathons, and one of the shows originated on Animal Planet, which is all of the Discovery channels are kind of linked, all joined at the hip. And it was a good show. It was called The Haunted. And what it was initially was primarily like focusing on people's hauntings with pets involved, because we all know that, our pets are sensitive to the supernatural, to the intrusions, of intruding entities, etc. Sometimes they're the first warning that something unusual is going on in the house. So initially that was the thing, and then I think as they got into a different, like past the first season, it started to kind of get away from that. But it was either in the first or second season that there was an episode called The House of the Rising Dead. And it was a New Orleans haunting in an uptown house. I can't remember the location, which I'm not going to give on the air. But anyway, the episode, that's the name of it, The House of the Rising Dead. And I was very interested in it because Bernadine had an investigative member or team member that kind of flagged you to it, right? I mean, he called and said he wanted to go in this. And what's the first thing he told you about it? Like hieroglyphics or something like that?
Yeah, he said that, I think he said in the basement. That was back in 2010, I believe. I can't remember. He said there was a lot of paintings on the walls and things, I think, in the basement. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
at the bottom of the house.
Well, it was in the back in a shed, actually. That's where it was. It was like a detached shed, a room, what do you call it? A yard shed, I guess, where they had, lawnmowers and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was on those walls, which kind of was on the back, which actually was at the rear of the property against the fence. Because people look at uptown, people who are not from New Orleans look at these uptown houses and they see mainly advertised, or, they see the St. Charles Avenue. And most of those houses have lawns, big lawns, and, but if you get off into the streets, like, just all of the magazine and all the other residential streets, usually these huge houses, some of them can be like right next to each other, like San Francisco, like they're almost touching. And it used to be called the American side of New Orleans because it had all that, Victorian architecture. So this house is one of those houses. And he went to do the station with, we won't name other people, but then they were filming this for TV. So the woman is named Carla Vase. I saw it the first time, and right after that, I found out some information. What essentially happened, very briefly. Dean, do you want to see? You just saw it today, so basically, tell us what happens in the episode.
In the episode, I think I'm trying to remember who the guys were that helped the investigation. It was one of the guys that used to be a twin.
Oh, it was Carl Johnson,
Carl Johnson and
Chris
Ken
Fleming.
Arrington.
Well, there was Carl Johnson, Chris Fleming, Kalila Smith, Ken Arrington, and some other people. And I'm just going to say they were having
And the clients, yeah.
right, the clients. And I remember in the the sort of lead up to the story that they bought this house. They I think were coming back to New Orleans and they had lived somewhere else. And this woman, she was a widow, and she brought her she went back to live in New Orleans. She brought a brother, I think a brother and a sister, but it was like a their little family. They bought this house, and when they did, when they even after they bought it, I don't know if they bought it sight unseen or when they did a walkthrough, nobody was there. But after they, they had the key in their hand and they owned it, they went inside and were walking around and they found a guy squatting in one of the upstairs rooms, right? And of course, that's a shock. You find somebody, living in a house you just bought. And the guy introduced himself, or kind of was forced to introduce himself as, I'm here for a reason. I'm the caretaker. And
Right.
they said, well, you need to get, out of our house. We don't need a caretaker. And he then, as he was like going out the door, he told them the paintings in the shed, don't erase those. Don't paint over those. So we're, so all right,
They're
that's
for protection.
right. He was there to, and when you think about a caretaker, he was there watching that. So he was the human element of the protection to keep it potent and keep it going. And apparently, some of the furnishings and items that were left on the wall went with the sale. And so one of the very first things that we hear about are mirrors, these huge mirrors, because this house has like 14-foot ceilings, these gaudy, beautiful Victorian style mirrors that were painted either white, all white, or there was, I think, one somewhere else that was black, but it was primarily white. So as we get into the story, we hear about a dog. The dog is afraid. The dogs are afraid in the house. Everybody's uncomfortable. The dog digs up a bone in the yard. It turned out everybody was like, "Oh, it could be a human bone." It turned out to be a dog bone of another dog, I guess, that was buried there. But strange things start happening after they take the paint off of the mirrors and they go in the back and they actually deface what's back there. Now, the way I heard it from, I don't even know, probably from you and then this other guy, Ken Arrington, the hieroglyphics were, no, I'm sorry, it was Kalila. The hieroglyphics were reversed. The images were reversed so that they had someone come in and read and look at the hieroglyphics. And
it was a mirror image.
Yeah, it was reversed. So in other words, the back of it was facing the house. So they were facing out. So this aired, they said they had a demonic, Carl Johnson and Chris Fleming came down. They said there was a demonic entity in the house. And in the history of the house, according to the neighbors, they used to have apparently some magical cult or coven that was active at that location, because the neighbors would say they saw people dressed in white, which is significant, white, bringing like little kennels covered with sheets or animals in cages and stuff like that. So they assume something's going on in there, they have to be killing those animals. And they go into the shed, and the hieroglyphics significantly are of Set, the god Set, the Egyptian god Set, and the crocodile god. There's Apep, the serpent that goes along the bottom of the wall, and they had, I don't know if they had Anubis or Horus, but the fact that they were backwards and so facing away was significant. And in looking, I was able to find out the reason that these things were there out in the shed and the things that were done in the house was because these people were so-called white witchcraft cult. They were more like a animal or a totem animal type situation where they would do their rituals, and the animals that they were bringing were basically going to become their familiars. Okay, so there was none of these animals were killed. Now, somebody, I think Chris Fleming, picked up animal blood in the shed. Okay, and that makes sense too, because if you look into Egyptian gods, Set is the bloody god of the storm and the typhoons and etc. He's essentially the Egyptian Satan, or the image of the devil, in the Egyptian belief system. And he's very powerful, right? So why would you put Set facing outside? Why would you put Anubis or whoever else was there facing away from your house? Well, I would think it would be to protect the house, okay? And in the episode, we see the guy went in there, the brother, I think it's her brother, went in there with, what do you call it, spray paint, and defaced these murals and everything. And guess what? Stuff started to happen even worse, right? And they took the thing, and the mirrors fell down, and the dogs were going crazy, right? Fell this tremendous crash of this mirror, the one that was painted white. And well, anyway, it fell off the thing. So what I have been told is that the white is like a sheet or whatever over it, obviously, so it's protection. But I'm from someone who was actually there, okay, that actually looked at the things. If you kind of got like to the side of it and looked at it from the right angle, you could see painted in enamel, there were symbols, etc. So they would shine against the flat surface of the white. What I found out is that on the other block, but just around the corner, not exactly, but almost around the corner, there was a coven that was into black and necromantic type magic. And there was some animosity between the man who led the coven, and I think what do they say his name, led the white coven. I think his name was something like, I don't know, Oreth or something, that was his last name. And the leaders of the other coven, and they were right around the corner. So if you had to live in a house that you own, but you know these people are sending crap at you, what are you going to do? You're going to close up every portal, and you're going to use some of the most powerful protection that you can possibly, cook up to keep this away from you. So they come in with this whole idea of it being demonic, and I think you've heard Dean and I talk enough about it's demonic. Okay, maybe, I don't know. Okay, but if you and I had been there, I would have said, "What did you do recently?" Well, we took all that paint off those mirrors. Oh, okay. Well, guess what? You just let them into your house. And as it happened, I don't think it was right around. No, I think the people were still behind. Like their house, the Vase house was empty, but the people were still living on the other house right before she bought it. So they were still living around the corner, but then moved. Okay, so there was
this before Katrina or after?
It was in 2000, I guess, after Katrina, if I can remember. Yeah, because she came down after Katrina hit. So I think in 2006 or 7.
And they bought the house for very cheap.
Yeah, she was surprised. And, so people have been puzzling about it. So, okay. So what I've told you about the Egyptian gods, about the protection, about the closing of the portals and the protection of the house, okay? We don't hear anybody who actually knows what happened. I mean, I hate to say this because there were some professional, quote unquote, professional people there, but nobody seemed to get it. And Dean and I were talking, and I actually called Carla Vase, and I didn't get to talk to her, but I did talk to her sister, the one who was pushed down the stairs. And she told me that in other words, it went away for a while, but it came back, whatever was in her house. It was still doing the same thing. And that it was attacking, according to her, I don't have any proof of it, but according to hearsay from the sister, that the woman, Carla, was being attacked even more. Okay, I guess as the owner of the house or whatever. So, and we asked to go if we could see her so that I could explain what I'm explaining right now to her. Why is this happening? Because you took down all of the wards that the coven before you and the man that lived here set up to protect this space from the negative entities and the evil that was being sent. So if you look at the episode, they're running around with the typical IR cameras. Everybody's got green eyes and all look like owls, and they're chasing the thing right before a commercial break, right? They said it's a demon, and they were like following it through the house, and then they chase it to the upstairs to the door of the attic, and then we go to a commercial break, and then when they come back, they said they heard a growl, okay, and they all come down the stairs. So I mean, Dean, if you and I chased something and got it cornered in the attic, wouldn't you do something about it?
I
Right?
would get my evidence right then and there.
Right then and there. And I would do whatever I was capable of doing with holy
Mm-hmm.
water, etc. And I would deal with it. If it's growling at me and they've cornered it in some kind of a whatever, an alcove or whatever leading to the
And
attic, I would.
they were sure it wasn't the dogs.
Right, right. And yeah, because the dogs were like downstairs present,
Mm-hmm.
present and accounted for. So that kind of was like, and Carl Johnson, he's not a newbie to anything. He's been doing this for years and years, and started with the Warrens, Lorraine Warren, and all them. But I don't know, and we've been on like a couple of shows. We're not going to say, oh, we're big celebrities, but you know how they are. They want what they want, and
Yeah.
so they did have an EVP of a growl. So somebody, and I will say this, somebody had the bright idea of the mirror thing and what they were
Yeah.
doing. Right. Okay. So they had three mirrors.
The triangle of mirrors.
Right. And
Huge mirrors.
huge mistakes. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're standing there, and Carl's holding one, and Chris Fleming's holding one, and Kalila's holding one, Kalila Smith. And all of a sudden they're doing this, whatever, and they've got these facing each other in a triangular, a triangle shape of mirrors. Okay. The very first sign of a problem was the mirrors, right? And speed forward. What do you want to do what do you do in magic when you want to manifest something? You're going to draw a triangle on the damn floor.
Yeah.
So I mean, the first time I saw this, I was like, what are they doing? And according to them, the mirrors were shaking, everybody was shaking, all this is going on. And I'm like,
I don't know why, but what I got from that, what I've pictured in my mind from the spirit probably point of view, would be making a portal.
yes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to manifest it more. And fast forward to when I actually talked to Miss Vase, she's having worse problems, right? Or I talked to her sister, the woman's having worse problems, that it was solved for a little while. And you and I know this, and we've had friends who have talked about it, such as Ralph Sarchi and all these others, that you can drive them away. You can drive the entities away, but they will withdraw only for a certain amount of time unless you've done it right. In other words, either exorcise the place or whatever, in the Catholic or religious sense of an exorcism to keep them out. But they did everything from the very beginning to draw these things in. And then I cannot believe that people of the sinew of, Johnston and Fleming will stand there and they're holding mirrors in a triangle of essentially manifestation. So the thing was the mirrors, the mirrors, the mirrors. So, what are you going to, so, y'all have a problem with mirrors. Well, I'm just going to stand here. There's an old story about Eliphas Levi, who was the author. He was a practitioner in the second half of the 1800s, and he was known for, writing the book Ritual Magic, whatever. It's an old exposition. Everybody knows the name. Okay, Eliphas Levi, look him up. But he drew the original Baphomet, the one that we see, the goat sitting there with the goat of Mendes with that people say is demonic. And in a sense it is. He drew that. And he was approached in the streets of Paris by a woman who wanted him to get in touch with someone from the dead, do a necromantic ritual from the dead to answer a question of a loved one. And what he was able to do is he set up his altar over a period of time. He did everything that he needed to do, including having the clothes and, everything blessed in the church, etc. And he set up 3 mirrors, one behind the altar that he was working on, and 2 to either the right and left sides of him facing. And in the middle is where he summoned the spirit of the Greek historian or philosopher Apollonius. And the guy came, and basically the ghost said no. And the answer to the woman's question was just no. But Levi said that he was so shaken up by this that he would never do it again. And he had nothing but problems from it. And he would, counsel any people who are, thinking of doing this kind of stuff to leave it severely alone. So this is the guy, one of the guys who, Aleister Crowley thought that he was the reincarnation of. This is one of the greats of Western ceremonial magic, and he's telling you, leave this alone. And the interesting thing is, well, he's using mirrors too. There's something about the portal. The mirrors are coated in mercury, in quicksilver and mercury. Mercury is for communication. Mercury, the planet, rules all of our communications. It rules living communication and dead communication. So when you want to get in touch with the other side, you use a mirror, like a scrying mirror, etc. But if you amplify the power of a mirror by doing this ritual, you're just in for trouble. I don't know, but there was some trouble. Basically, things happened afterward that was just, unfortunate. And it's like, people look at these programs and they look at people and they say they're experts. And these people they're recognized. All of them are recognized as knowing what they're doing. But people can make mistakes and people might not know everything. And then people that are going to be on TV might be encouraged to do stuff for the entertainment value of it, right? So, all of that in a nutshell. I really wanted to tell this woman, and she, of course, didn't give us a chance to go down there, that those hieroglyphs and those images in that shed were your protection against whatever that coven sent. And even if they're gone from around the corner and they're not there anymore, that channel, that river of energy, or that channel of energy is still coming at this location. It doesn't necessarily diminish over time or go away, okay? Because if there was some real hate between the guy who owned that house, or the coven in that house and the coven in the other, they were continuing to do it wherever the hell they were if they really hated the guy, right? So, but as soon as they defaced those wards, took down those mirrors and did what they did, then the stuff happened. And from the beginning, okay, the guest is almost here. Let me just wrap up by saying, everything you see on TV, you cannot believe. Okay, you simply cannot believe. And
don't do it at home.
Don't do it at home. But this is the thing: people see these programs and they imitate the things that are done. And literally, almost half of that is for entertainment purposes, right? Because you wouldn't be watching the program if you weren't entertained. If you want to really seriously study magic, don't read anybody. Don't look at anything. Go on your own and find it. But that's the story of the vase haunting. That's the actual occult analysis of it. And that's what really happened. And it's still going on. And the problems have multiplied around it because they did not do what was right in that situation. Instead, they manifested. They didn't send something back to the other side. They manifested it. So anyway, Joe, is our guest on the line? I don't know. He said guest. I don't know if we're here yet, if Lyle's on with us. Tonight's guest is Lyle Blackburn. He is an author, a musician, and a legend hunter.
Lyle?
Hey, Lyle. This is Eileen Pastanio, and I was just introducing you. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Dean, you want to go ahead?
Hey.
There's Bernadine.
Yeah, Eileen was reading some of your bio.
Mm-hmm.
And,
but if you want to introduce yourself, that'll be easier.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. I'm Lyle Blackburn. I'm an author, cryptid researcher and musician from Texas, and I've written several books in the realms of cryptozoology, including The Beast of Boggy Creek. I've been on several shows, including Monsters and Mysteries in America, Finding Bigfoot, and I am the producer and narrator of the Small Town Monsters films. Our newest film is The Man of Point Pleasant.
Wow. Very good. Yeah, we were actually at a convention with you. It was a Pensacola Paracon, I think. I think we've crossed paths a couple of times. So, but it's always interesting to a lot of people associate you just like with Bigfoot and with those those Sasquatch and all that stuff. But just like we had Nick Redfern on once, and he's like into all kind of stuff, not just Men in Black and UFOs. So I know Dean's got some questions that she wants to ask you about all that. So go ahead, Dean.
Okay, Lyle, how old were you whenever you had the thought of anything to do with monsters, legends, and creatures?
Well, I mean, that's just something I've been interested in my whole life. So, monster legends, creatures, that's just, sort of been something that I, initially just read about or, watched early documentaries or movies, such as The Legend of Boggy Creek. And then later in life, when I started writing in a professional manner, those were the topics that I always loved. So that's kind of what, kept inspiring me to do the work I do.
Oh, okay. Because I asked that because a lot of paranormal researchers, and I'm a paranormal investigator researcher, I have my own team. Most of us get into the paranormal field because things that happened to us in our childhood that we didn't understand, and we want to research and try to find out, what the supernatural, paranormal problems were in our childhood. So that gives us the interest to start up later on in life, if we keep having experiences. So I didn't know if maybe you had an experience as a child.
Well, yeah, no, it really didn't come necessarily from that. I've experienced a few strange things, even in the sort of ghostly realm. But I think it was just a combination of, as far as the cryptids and the outdoors aspect of the monster type thing. It was just from growing up as a hunter. My father was a bow hunter, so I was always out in the woods,
okay.
and then that kind of just had me fascinated with the possibility that Sasquatch creatures, could be out there as well. And then once I, learned that there were sightings in my area near Texas, then that made it even more exciting. So, but, I didn't, it wasn't something that I, had a sighting or anything like that, or even knew anybody that did. So it was just something I was interested in.
Yeah,
well, I'm sorry, I was coming in with a question. Have you had sightings? Have you had any sightings since then? Like as you've gotten up? I'm sorry. Wait, this is my cousin. I'm sorry, my cousin's. Anyway, it came in. She's live, and somehow or another she must have tagged me. I was saying, have you since you've become interested in it, and you've written so many books? Have you had personal experiences and sightings of not just Bigfoot, but other things that they say are out there?
Right. No, I've never had a sighting that I would say is definitively an unknown creature. There's been things that have occurred, strange howls, tracks, and things like that, that have happened. So, just short, I suppose, of some sort of a sighting. But of course, as sort of taking this in an investigative journalist approach, I've interviewed, hundreds of people and do on a constant basis who have seen things. So that sort of, it kind of keeps me hoping that, one of these days I would see something myself. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you haven't yet? Because I know there's this whole show, and we talked about this last week, on Destination America about these guys, mountain monsters or monster hunters or whatever it is, and we were talking about like the arc of this show where they were like serious in the beginning, seriously looking for stuff out, and they were primarily in the South at first, and now it's like some, it's some out there drama. About the witch in the woods and the black wolf and all, and I have to wonder whether like the producers and stuff just say, look, we need entertainment, which doesn't really help support the case that there really are things out there that are unexplained. I think of
and certainly that show Mountain Monsters it's all fictitious, always has been. So nothing about that, even though, sometimes they do, they're hunting Bigfoot and Mothman, who, of which have, real sightings. But you're right, that just confuses the matter because that, not all television shows are fictitious, but that one in particular is completely made up. All the witnesses are fake and everything else, so it's confusing. Yeah,
it's wild because when I first watched it, and it's just by means of saying what the heck is going on. When I first watched it, it was kind of trying to be at least serious about the script or whatever they had going on. But now running around and they're scared because somebody got kidnapped and all this other. I mean, it's just and it really does. It just underscores. Unfortunately, what people think about that whole cryptozoology thing, and they lump all of that, like Mothman and Bigfoot and all that together into that, and they say, oh, it's a bunch of crazy people out in the woods, But I have seen documentaries, even on like Nat Geo, where they've gone out there into the areas where they've seen them, and it is creepy. It's really scary because they're, in my opinion, the way I feel about Bigfoot is it's a supernatural entity to me. And it manifests itself, and it's manifesting in that way as a Yeti or as a whatever. It's some supernatural entity that is choosing to interact with us in that form and basically play around with us, But what do you think about people like the original the first video of the Bigfoot looks like a guy in a monkey suit, and then we know we once had featured her Dana Holyfield from the Honey Island Swamp Monster fame. We featured her at a convention, and it's so widespread and it's so different. So what do you really feel is actually out there?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a case-by-case basis, of course, with, the purported evidence, like you say, the Patterson-Gimlin film, which I've looked into. I know Bob Gimlin very well, and, it's just something that can never be proven because what's in the film is just, that's all there is to it. So everybody certainly has an opinion and a breakdown of that. And I think, Bigfoot research to me doesn't hinge on the believability of that one certain film. It's the entire, body of evidence and the things that I've, found during my research or, interviewing people or studying tracks. So I think that Bigfoot, there is a possibility that, there is some sort of, undocumented ape-like animal that is out there and has managed to remain elusive all this time. When you get to more of the regional creatures, the little more Bigfoot-like but a little more bizarre, such as the Honey Island Swamp Monster, I think there's some good stuff to that and some that's not so good of evidence. So there's just the nuances of each case where, I think as a whole, you have people who, are interpreting things that may or may not be attributed to these animals, in different ways. So, but to me, I would rate each type of cryptid, on a scale of say 1 to 10, some of them being more believable than others. So it's just sort of a a very broad type of thing if you're just trying to understand the whole thing, but you would have to look at each case by itself to determine, the plausibility of each one.
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, because people, zoologists, et cetera, say it can't possibly be real. There could, if there was something like that out there, we would know about it. And yet, almost every year or every few months, they're discovering something they either thought was extinct or they didn't know about. And maybe Bigfoot or some creature like that, some primate type creature, is one of those things. So I don't want to. I wouldn't. I'm not for the guys who dismiss it, but it's like shaking out the net and getting the charlatans out and actually getting somebody who's done some serious research, like you. And there's a couple of people like in the Northwest. So, Dean, you want to ask some questions?
Yeah. I don't know if you watched the show Killing Bigfoot. I'm a big animal person, and I was really upset when I seen the previews of that. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but it really did. They're all sitting like in auditorium or something, and they're having this big meeting, town meeting, and they're talking. One guy's at the table talking about if they see Bigfoot, they're going to kill him. And then the person in the audience is saying, well, you're crazy, that could be a human. You're killing a human. And then the other guy says, it's not a human, it's an animal. And I'm like, well, okay. But what if it's a person in a suit, which would be a bad idea if they're trying to kill Bigfoot. But even if Bigfoot, if they did find Bigfoot, why would they want to kill him?
Well, I actually don't even have cable, but I've seen the first episode. I know all those guys. In fact, what you were talking about, that meeting, I was actually there.
But tell them I'm mad at them.
I
don't want them to kill Bigfoot. I mean, as long as y'all been looking for him, you're gonna find him and put him out.
You just got to keep in mind it's a television show. That's the thing. These shows are entertainment first, reality second.
And when you're cursing at your TV, you're glad they can't hear you.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the first thing that comes to mind when they said they're going to kill me too. And I mean, I wasn't watching it with her. I was like, wait a minute, they're going to shoot somebody who's out there. I mean, that's really the first thing that came to mind, because what they're catching is guys in suits. What if they shoot somebody and that one man stood up? You're going to kill.
I mean, on a television show, you're not going to carry live ammo. It's not going to happen. So.
Oh well, I'm glad.
You hope not. Huh?
Well, I know not. I mean, I've been in television, so I know that you're not going to be out there with live ammo shooting at things and people. But I mean, I think the point of the show is a hotly debated subject of Bigfoot. It's that these guys are operating under the premise that it's really never going to be ultimately proven unless there's a body, because like you say, science and most mainstream scientists are just going to dismiss this based upon how much chicanery there has been in Bigfoot, the hoaxes, all the stuff, and that's pretty much what they see. So at this point, you're looking at extremes. Now, I don't support going out and harvesting one of these creatures in order to support it, to prove it. That's not my agenda. But the arguments are, of course, I mean, this, you can look back in history, like the mountain gorilla. The same thing. People were saying we see these gorillas or these huge ape-like things, and nobody believed them until some guy shot one and brought it back, and then suddenly scientists are like, oh, I guess there is something to this. So.
That's cruel.
But ultimately, yes. I mean, that's not the way that I think, not what I would do, but that's just something that's hotly debated in Bigfoot research. And the show, I think they simply call it Killing Bigfoot because it does provoke, people to watch it. What is this about? And and it creates discussion. And it's a television show, but at the root of that, it's just those researchers have been trying to do this for some years and haven't had any luck yet. So for those that feel the show is bad, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's
Well, that's why I
Yeah.
didn't watch it, because I didn't want to see Bigfoot get killed.
I didn't want to see a human get killed. That would be terrible if they actually shoot somebody and they take the mask off and it's. Um, but Bigfoot's not alone out there in the crypto world. So I mean, we've heard chupacabra a lot. We hear chupacabra and Mothman, which you've recently worked on, and I mean, just all sorts of other animals and creatures that could be real or that we see the evidence of, like blood sucked out of the chickens in, I think it was Cuba or wherever, or Puerto Rico, where they first saw the chupacabra. How do you order that, like, in your mind? And what are your opinions on all these different creatures?
Well, chupacabra, that's kind of a tricky one because there's basically two types of that. The original reports started in around 1995 and came out of Puerto Rico and a lot of the Latin American countries, of a sort of more bipedal creature that stood maybe 3 feet tall. It had spikes down its back and large eyes, and it was, supposedly sucking the blood of a lot of livestock there on these rural farms. Now, that case itself, nothing's, no body or no photo of a chupacabra has really been proven. So I'm not sure there whether we're dealing with, local folklore or we're dealing with a real creature. And then you have these sort of four-legged canine-looking versions that you see in Texas and the South U.S. Those are not the same quote-unquote chupacabras as the original Latin American version, because what happened is the media in the 2000s applied that term chupacabra to these dogs that ended up, in some cases, were proven to be coyotes with mange. In some cases were some sort of, possible hybrid canid of some sort, which, ends up not necessarily being a monster, but it certainly does fall into the realms of cryptozoology, because it could be some other type of species, a strange hybrid, or some mutated version of a normal animal. So I think, the case by case, but the chupacabra, there's something there to it, and certainly we've got, there's a dash cam film from DeWitt County, Texas, that shows, one of these. We got bodies. There's a taxidermy chupacabra from Blanco, Texas, which is a canid with very bizarre physical attributes. So, I think there's possibly something to that. What else we got? I wrote a book on Lizard Man, which is
Tell us about that.
well, that's, in the realms of cryptozoology, you have a category which is called lizard men or reptilian humanoids. And it's kind of a gray area somewhere between alien life, purported extraterrestrials, and, some sort of possible biological, anomaly. But the most famous case of that is known as the Bishopville lizard man, and that case is from the late 80s, in which people near Bishopville, South Carolina, began reporting seeing some upright, 7-foot-tall, humanoid type thing that was covered in either scales or mottled hair or something, and the locals called it the lizard man. And the police looked into this, and one kid said he had a flat tire in this area of Scape-Ore Swamp one night, and as he was finishing up changing the tire, this thing came out of the woods there and tried to attack him. He barely got in his car and got away. The police were involved in this investigation, and they were quite certain that something had happened to this kid. They weren't sure it was a lizard man, but the case was, really spooky and just a lot of really cool aspects to that story. I went out there to Bishopville myself and interviewed some witnesses and the police officers, and just sort of ended up being a book on that story. But lizard men, hey, it's obviously a stretch biologically when you're talking about any sort of a reptile / human hybrid. It's just not something that's going to be possible in nature. So theories of that are, it could have been, maybe it was a Bigfoot that was, had a skin condition. It was coming from the swamp. It could have been wet to give it the appearance of scaly skin, things like that. That, you're explaining one cryptid with another, so it just really
yeah, it's like a daisy chain.
Yeah. So,
it could be somebody, it could be somebody with and I'm not saying this jokingly, like a really bad skin condition. And I guess, if something crept up on me at night suddenly, and I'm on some deserted road or whatever I'm doing, I'm going to think it's 7 feet tall. It's going to be, creepy and 7 feet tall and whatever. And I'm going to want to get the hell out, So, it's something like, and then when you settle down, you'll say, well, maybe it wasn't like 7 feet tall. In a lot of cases, this is what I find. They say, oh, well, maybe, it could have been exaggerating because you were scared. But evidently something, happened to these people, which was another show that they had, Monsters and Mysteries, which they still show. And they've done the Lizard Man and the Melon Heads and I don't know how many of these you've actually researched, probably all of them. But recently, the Mothman, right? What do you think about the Mothman? Because we've had a couple of people on that actually encountered it recently. It was like on Paranormal Witness or something. So what do you think about the Mothman phenomena?
Yeah, I think, and just a quick side note, the Monsters and Mysteries in America is a good show. I was on that Lizard Man episode, and that is a solid show interviewing real witnesses with real stories. So it's a good example of bizarre sightings. Mothman, there is definitely something strange, going on that has, especially in the years 1966 and into 67, when the original Mothman incidents occurred. People saw something, it was some sort of a bird-like entity or a huge bird or something else, that can't be explained, without using supernatural theories. But, I think there's something to that. And, it's a case that involves, cryptozoology. It's got, UFOs, just the Men in Black. It's just got a little bit of everything that makes it hard to really pinpoint, what is the Mothman? And, just a fascinating story. And I think all of these, Lizard Man, Mothman, any of them, whether we can prove it or not, it's the fascinating story that I, am attracted to. And I think that there are these mysteries that we want to try to find explanations for, and maybe we never will, but it's the fascination of the mystery. And Mothman, our movie, The Mothman of Point Pleasant, it concentrates on that 13 months prior to the collapse of the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So from the first Mothman sighting up to there, and that's when the all these strange things were happening, and witnesses were coming forward with these stories. So it's something happened to those people. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's what you get, because everybody can't be lying. People say, oh, I mean, everybody can't be lying. There's sincerity at some point. There's a lot of people who either firmly believe. I believe them. I mean, I look at everything through a supernatural lens. So, and that's everything, reality. But I believe them. And the only thing that I have sort of a like, a moment is like it's all connected with like that one manifestation. Although people have said they've seen it since then, right? But the one manifestation before, the bridge collapse thing, so the story was just mutilated by the Mothman Prophecy movie, but it seemed like it was like a one-off. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to show up and save this from this bridge, and then I'm really not going to really show up anymore. I guess there have been other sightings, though, have they?
Yeah, there has been. I mean, following the bridge collapse, sightings, and nobody there wanted to hear about the Mothman anymore. Obviously, there was a great human tragedy, and the Mothman just sort of went away. But over the years, there have been other sightings in that area of, humanoid bird-like entities, and all other places. I mean, there's been many, many other sightings. In fact, just recently in Chicago, there's been about a dozen sightings of a giant bat, humanoid type creature that's occurred within city limits, near the Michigan Lake and places like that. But so yeah, you have these flying humanoid things being reported everywhere, and certainly that's another just spooky, spooky proposition that these things be out there. And the Mothman being obviously the most famous, but there's many other reports.
That's wild, because with all of the the crime and everything going on in Chicago, it's weird because sometimes people see these things around those kind of areas. That there's tragedy, there's continuing tragedy. Dean, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, I have some questions about your investigating. When you travel through the woods and waterways, do you do this at night, or is it at a certain time of day when you feel you're going to get the best capture, like photographs and evidence?
Well, it could be, it's both. I think that, to give an example, if I go to an area near where there's been lots of sightings close to a swampy area, if you're walking through there during the day, you can look for footprints. I mean, obviously that would be a great find, and there's muddy areas, and if you're walking it during the day, you can certainly see better. So there's something to do in the daylight, which we've often done. But yeah, a lot of the research is done at night. Just, I don't know, a lot of the sightings happen at night, so it seems to be a more likely time when, if you're going to go in the area, you may see something. So, we would use waterways a lot to travel with canoes in swampy areas, or if it's, for example, a more mountainous area, then we would, hike up at night, go up on game trails and places where animals would move, and use things like thermal imagers and night vision goggles and things like that to better see at night. So there's a little bit of everything as far as, the time in which, and you almost just have to take what available time you have when you're in an area. You try to use, as much as you can. So daylight and nighttime, either one is all good.
Have you ever been? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just saying, have you ever been scared out there?
Well, I'd like to say no, but there's been a few times that, things, I mean, there are things out there that you will encounter that are just as scary. I mean, I almost walked up on a huge alligator once, sitting in the brush on the edge of the bayou. The bayou channel, it zigzags back and forth, and we're walking along on a trail, and we you couldn't see where the bayou channel was, and suddenly we were very close to the water, and I heard this just big splash, and I saw this tail go up above the grass, and these things
Wow.
are huge. So, it's those kind of things you kind of jump a little bit and say, wow, that's pretty scary. But as far as, being out there at night, I'm never really scared. I'm familiar with the woods, and, nothing, I'm prepared and nothing scares me. But we did come across, one evening, it was just very still, very quiet. The moon was up, and we were kind of walking in this little trail that we had found that was kind of concealed in the brush, and we're moving along that, and in the dark, and it just had that spooky vibe. And a friend of mine was behind me, and he, for some reason, decided to turn on his light, and he looked down, and right there, it looked like a footprint. Something had crossed this little two-rut four-wheeler type road, and he said, "Hey, come here and look at this." And when I went back there and looked at that point, suddenly it sort of, the realization that something could have walked right past there. It could even be watching us right then. That really did kind of spook me at that moment.
Gosh.
And, those are it's part of the fun, but it's also, it's kind of a chilling type revelation.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Dean.
Do you ever feel sometimes, when everything quiets down and you guys are settled in, that something's watching you?
Well, I haven't gotten that feeling too often. I know the feeling, but, maybe a few times where we felt something could be out there, and, you get that kind of spooky feeling. I mean, there was one time we were camped, and something walked between our tents. It was definitely on two legs, and we thought it was a person, but turned out apparently it wasn't. So it was, things could be watching you, and even, while you're asleep in a tent, something could literally walk right by you. At that point, you kind of realize you're vulnerable,
I don't think I'd be able to sleep.
Not outside. No, me either.
No.
I'm sorry. I was reading some accounts of what do you call it, park rangers and solitary hikers and stuff, and that's kind of like why I'm going because most of the things that really freaked them out involved humans primarily. There was one guy said that he took out like a camp. I guess a Boy Scout troop or some middle schoolers, and they were doing like a camp out on some mountain in North Carolina that was well known, basically. And he was the last one asleep, and he was in a hammock because it was a warm night, etc. And he saw a man coming up, like at 3 a.m. And he thought at first it was like a bear or, something out hunting, but it turned out to be a man. And the man came and didn't know that he was awake in the hammock. And this guy looked around the camp and then sat down for like 3 or 4 hours until like the first light of dawn, and then he left. So that's why I'm asking, is it scary out there? Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. I would be, well, other than bears, I would be more afraid of, human beings out there. But then I've never seen anything that some of these people have described as Bigfoot or some other cryptid creatures. But we'll segue into the Boggy Creek thing. I remember that movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek, and we used to I saw it in a show, I think, way back in the day. I think I saw it at the movies. And what is I guess it's kind of like another legend, but what's behind that? The folk, I know they call it the folk monster, and it was in Arkansas, but you've written like 2 books about this, follow-up or maybe more, from the first one, but I'm looking on your site. So what's the deal with Boggy Creek?
Well, that was something that was, instrumental in my interest in all of this, because I also, when I was really young, I saw it in the drive-in theater with my parents, and that was kind of the moment that I realized Bigfoot-like creatures could possibly be, close by to where I live, not all the way in the Pacific Northwest. So, and as well, the movie obviously is a horror movie. It does dramatize real sightings, real reports by real people, but it's made to be spooky and scary, and it's quite effective at that. At the time, it was just a super scary movie, and it was just something that made you definitely not want to go in the woods, especially near Fouke, Arkansas. But the movie was inspired originally by newspaper reports in the early 1970s, in which people near this little town of Fouke in southwest Arkansas were reporting encounters with an upright, 7-foot tall, hairy, man-like thing. Basically a Bigfoot-like creature. But at the time, people in that area, they didn't know the term Bigfoot. They'd never heard of that. They just described this, as more in terms of some sort of an ape-like creature or a monster. And in fact, the paper called it the Fouke Monster. So as newspaper reports came out, a would-be filmmaker by the name of Charles B. Pierce, who lived in Texarkana, was following that, and he thought, wow, this would make a great documentary or a movie. And he began to go down to Fouke and literally film people reenacting the encounters. And a lot of times these were the actual people that had the encounter. And that's one reason the movie looks so realistic, is because he's using the real people. These aren't actors. He's not scripted. It's basically reenactments and done in a very spooky way. And, as these stories started coming out in the paper in the early 70s, a lot of the old-timers said, well, this isn't the first time there's been reports. This thing goes back many, many years. And if you go down here in the Sulphur River bottoms and talk to these people, they'll tell you, numerous stories about seeing this creature down here. So it was something that, had a big impression on me, obviously, as a kid who was into monsters, into cryptozoology, and I saw the Legend of Boggy Creek like you did, and it was like, just a huge impression. So later, when I started writing books, I was looking at it now. I was like, well, I want to know what was real about that. It was based on a true story, but I want to know the real story. I want to know, the history of the creature. So I started going up to Fouke and interviewing people and just looking into the story of that, and that ended up being my book, The Beast of Boggy Creek, which was, I didn't really realize how many people remembered and loved the movie until my book came out, and suddenly, I was on television shows talking about it, and I was doing, talking all over the country at Bigfoot conferences and paranormal conferences about this, and so many people came up and said, "Oh man, that movie, I love that movie. It's one reason I'm into this subject." So it was just something that, was just a major thing with many cryptozoologists. And the thing about the story is, it's not just a historical thing. As I started interviewing people, I realized there had been sightings that had continued ever since. So, it wasn't just something that happened in the 70s or up prior to the 70s. There's been sightings ever since, and now, of course, I've written another book, Beyond Boggy Creek, which I pick up with some of the more recent sightings. So it's just a continuing story, and one that's fascinated me for my entire life.
Yeah, it was. It didn't affect me that way primarily because I lived like in the cement jungle. I was like in suburbia. So when we went to the movies to see it, it was like, oh, I wasn't going home to. I didn't live on a bayou. I didn't live, even there were houses like right next to me. So I didn't have that, even an open lot, that I was worried about, that I would be afraid. But yeah, it was. And I mean, I was younger, but it was like, this looks totally real. And, and then it kind of got to where people were kind of ribbing each other, oh, the Legend of Boggy Creek. But, it's still a good movie. And I like it. I mean, I think, Dean, have you ever seen it?
When I was younger,
Yeah.
but I don't remember much of it.
Yeah, I saw it on the late night stuff. Let me ask you this. What about crossing over into things like werewolves and wendigos and skinwalkers, etc. Have you ever gotten kind of looped into that while studying all of this?
I mean, it kind of is on the periphery of, of what I normally research, and I'm familiar with, the legends and lore and cases of all those type things. I guess the most commonly I would look into cases of dogmen, which, werewolves obviously implies that, a human has transformed into a wolf, whereas the dogmen phenomenon is more like people reporting some sort of canids that are large and can walk on two legs. So not necessarily a supernatural thing, but but all the other things, the Wendigo and the Skinwalkers, I mean, those are stories that cross your path many times, and I've certainly read, The Hunt for the Skinwalker, some of the best books on the subject, and I just don't, I kind of specialize in what I specialize, and those aren't something I've necessarily researched, but they're certainly fascinating and things that, I enjoy to learn more about when I can.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dean. I'm sorry.
Well, I know you interview a lot of people on the Bigfoot and the sightings and things like that. I kind of wonder. I know from what I've heard. I don't know, what your witnesses have told you, but do all the Bigfoot sightings, are there all big, hairy people with big feet, or because you have to wonder, where's the mom, where's the kids, where's the teenagers? I mean, are they all just big men type Bigfoots that are sighted?
No, I do get reports of, various heights, and ages of these creatures. I interviewed a woman had a really solid, credible sighting in 2014, and she saw one that, an ape-like, hair-covered creature on two legs that she said was about 5 feet tall. And that was kind of her question. She says, "Aren't Bigfoot supposed to be bigger?" I said, "Well, they've got to grow,
That they multiply, breed.
Yeah, if indeed these are biological creatures of some sort or small populations, then yeah, it would make sense to have these other reports. So yeah, I've had reports of, juveniles, as you would call them, which most people, those aren't the kind of stories that, are usually, front page news, but there are certainly many reports of smaller ones that come across your path as you interview people.
Yeah. I was just thinking though, when you said juveniles, etc., it's so it's like frustrating because there's never any phones. They don't see small things like juveniles or babies, baby Bigfoots. They have, they take casts of the feet, and then sometimes they get hair samples and they send them in. I don't know. I don't know if Bigfoot, like if it were real or if it's supernatural. Do you feel like it'll ever be proven by science that even though you found just like little hints of it, that it could be something like an undiscovered creature somewhere out there?
I mean, I think it's possible. I don't, there's got to be some way to explain, even if 5% of these witnesses, actually saw what they described as a Bigfoot, then there's got to be something to it. And sometimes, I think, man, just any day, somebody's going to come up with, the body or the bones or the proof or a very clear picture. It just tends to seem that way, but yet the day goes by and another day goes by and still no proof. So, it's hard to say. There's been, it's been 50 years since the famous Patterson-Gimlin film, and we're really not any closer to, being able to prove it than we were there, other than we have a larger pile of footprints and a, bigger pile of hair that can't be identified. So there's not, really many better films, and so who knows? In another 50 years, it could be sitting here talking to my daughter, who will be a future cryptozoologist or whatever, and she may be discussing the same thing. I don't know, but
well, what do you think? I mean, it seems to be from folklore. It seems to exist in the collective memory of a lot of different peoples in their lore and their oral traditions. I was just thinking about the Yeti in Russia and in the Himalayas, and just other things, that basically kind of mimic it. And when just coming from the point of like a folklorist that says, there's always like a kernel of truth at the bottom, of the legend that builds up around it. So what do you think about the Yeti?
Yeah, I think the Yeti, they're definitely, it's mired in more folklore. I mean, you're dealing with natives who have a certain view of the creature that oftentimes we're trying to figure out. We don't have the same mindset as they do. They have almost a religious belief about the creature. So I think the Yeti. There's been some DNA tests lately that suggest that perhaps it is some sort of a hybrid bear-like creature, a bear or something like that. I think that's a possibility, not necessarily that it's an ape or a man-like creature. It could turn out to be something a little more mundane, but I think there could still be something to the Yeti. And like you say, I mean, I think you got a good point earlier about it may not turn out to be 7 foot tall. When people see things like this, it may end up a little more mundane. Bigfoot itself, somebody could bring it in and it could be 5 feet tall. But when you see something like that, it's, your estimations are 6 or 7 feet tall because it was, you saw it at a time where it was shocking and
scared the hell out of you. Yeah, I mean, seriously, like.
So I think that at the end of the day, it could possibly be less monstrous than our collective imaginations make it. But I still think that there could be something to it, and I think even for the Yeti, we still could find an explanation, some sort of an animal that we didn't realize was out there that count for the descriptions of the Yeti, and the fact that the Sherpas say that it's definitely not a bear. It's not a man, it's not a bear, it's a Yeti. So who knows? So.
Well, yeah. I mean, in those mountains over there, they know them. The Sherpas know them, but who's going to be able to climb, into the valleys and everything where these things go to disprove that, So, but it's interesting when it just shows up kind of across the board. We've got them in the Northwest America, the American Northwest, and Canada, and we've got them in Russia, which was linked at one primordial time, was actually linked. So I mean, it's just, I always look at that. I like to believe in the abominable snowman, pretty much because I live in Louisiana and I know I will never see one. It's like I don't want to see an abominable snowman. So anyway, Dean, I'm gonna let you jump back in.
Well, I think if they do exist, they're pretty intelligent if they're going to stay hidden as good as they do. And you can't blame them, because humans are crazy, Like we have a lot of sightings of UFOs. Well, they're more intelligent than we are. So why would they want to come down here and get shot? Because that's the first thing humans think about is, let me, defend myself. And they don't even know, just because they look different, they don't know that they're dangerous. They just assume they're dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They could be extraterrestrials are probably much smarter, and they're just watching, and And it would stand. Logic would dictate that things like creatures like Bigfoot obviously would have to have some certain above average intelligence to, you know, allow them to remain hidden, remain elusive, and to do so is probably smart on their part.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Because I mean, when you're talking about the proof, I don't think unless they capture it alive, which would be terrible. That's just what humans do when they capture things alive, like elephants and all this other stuff. So we would do the same thing. And if they shoot it dead, so it doesn't win no matter no matter what option is taken. So it's better to elude mankind, which is smart because we either kill it and eat it, kill it and stuff it, or keep it in chains. It's a terrible thing, but it's true. So that's why I kind of like when I look at these programs and I listen to people like you, I hope they never find it. I like the fact that it's like, oh, I'm going to go step here, leave this footprint, and I might put some hair on this bush, but these people are crazy, So, do you ever? This is just an off the wall. Do you ever look into things like Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, sea creatures, stuff like that?
Well, being located in Texas, as far as doing much research on lake monsters like that, there's not many lakes down here that have reports. A lot of those, you're looking at the northern hemisphere. You're looking at the northern parts of the U.S. and Canada, and of course Scotland and places natural bodies of water like that. Here we've got a man-made lakes. The best legends we got are like giant catfish or something. But and I'm sure too. But so I'm quite knowledgeable on the history of Nessie and other more obscure ones, Morag and Ogopogo and Champ, which would be sort of the bigger one here. So I'm certainly knowledgeable on those, but I've never actually done much research, physical research, or interviewed. And I'm trying to think if I've ever even gotten a report. I've gotten a few reports of lake monsters, but not of I've never got a Champ report or anything like that. It's just not in my zone here, I guess, in the southern part.
Yeah, I mean, we got bayous down here and, over in Louisiana, but, it's, we're not like on the Pacific coast where, I was watching on a YouTube channel, it was supposed to be something like the 5 most disturbing things sighted or the 5 strangest sounds or whatever. And there was this one satellite photograph of the Pacific Ocean taken from one of our satellites. And there was this big dark mass that was there and was swimming or evidently was moving and then suddenly, either went down too far or whatever. So it's like, watch Godzilla, he's really down there thanks to Fukushima, but I stay on the beach. I like, I say the beach and the whatever. I like to look. I'm not going to go out in, those catfish exist, the ones with the big mouths, and because they're out on the rigs in the Gulf, they have to pay those divers a lot of money to go down and deal with it, but these can be like 10 feet long. So that's monster enough for me, right? A monstrous catfish is like, I just thought, maybe you had come into contact with it or with people who had, and, you had an opinion about it. Go ahead, Dean.
Well, I was wondering, since you said that you do use night vision video, things like that, have you or your team ever come across, while researching, out in the wilderness, come across an actual apparition of a ghost?
Yeah.
I have to ask you that.
No.
Well, firstly, do you believe in ghosts? That's
Well, yeah. I mean, I believe there is definitely something to that. Now, whether the apparition is a dead person or what, I'm not sure. But I mean, to me,
it's a dead
no
person.
doubt.
Maybe like a
people
Civil
have
War
seen.
soldier, something like that, just passing by.
Yeah, I mean, the people see this, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's too many reports, and even there's a lot of photos that can't be explained. You know, so yeah, I think there's something to that for sure. And I mean, I was always been fascinated with ghost stories and ghost tales, and um, all that. So yeah, I think it's something that's of research value, and it's a cool subject.
But in your evidence, you've never captured anything by accident like that?
No, we've never got anything on the thermal that was anything other than a normal animal.
Okay.
There's been no apparitions. I mean, when I was younger, when I was in high school, I actually saw what would be considered a ghost at a friend's house, and it was something that his parents had seen, he had seen, and several of my friends had seen.
Wow.
And on one occasion, when I was there, I saw it too, and it was literally like kind of a whitish human-shaped figure, just what you think a ghost would look like, and I saw it as well. So, ironically, I mean, I suppose you could say I've seen a ghost but never seen a cryptid. So how that works,
Yeah, it's true.
I don't know, but maybe I just, ghosts for me are solved. I'm on to something else, but
Well, I'm glad we got one, a check in our column over here because, everybody's got to start somewhere, and I had encounters and, demonic hauntings in my home because of, my mother's interest in the occult brought us into contact with some things I would rather not have, but it always sets you, like on a little quest to understand what you were dealing with. And sometimes, when you look into it, it's the 7-foot thing. It's like, oh, well, maybe it was that. But in my case, no, my mom was into stuff that she had no idea what she was doing. And when I learned about it later, I'm like, oh my God, OMG, I'm surprised I'm still alive with, the stuff that was going on. But we're coming up almost to the end. What's coming up in the future for you? I know you've been at a bunch of events and you're always on TV, et cetera. So I was wondering just what's in the future.
Yeah, I'm kind of off most of the summer from events. The next one will be the International Bigfoot Conference in Kennewick, Washington, September 1st through the 3rd, which will be a nice one. And that's followed the next weekend with Cryptid Con in Kentucky, and then I'll be at the Mothman Festival in mid-September as well. This summer I've got a few television shoots. There's a new show that I'm going to be on that sounds pretty interesting, so I'm just kind of working on the logistics of that. So a little bit of TV, and hopefully start working on ideas for another book. So there's always something going on.
That's good. Yeah. Anything else, Dean?
No, that's about it.
Yeah. Oh, well, Lyle, thank you. I mean, we're going to be looking for you at some events, but like we're two old ladies. No, we don't really go, but no, we have like a couple that we go. But you're always a great guest, and I mean, added a great presenter and lecturer. I'm glad you took the time to to join us tonight. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. I enjoy speaking about the subject, so thanks for having me on.
Well, good. Thank you for coming on. And next time you get something new out, a new book or something, maybe you can come on back and tell us all about that. So, well, I'm going to say have a great weekend.
Yes.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Okay, y'all take it easy.
Bye, Lyle.
Good night.
Okay, bye.
So we're going to take a break in about a minute, and we're going to be back after that. I like it. I like talking about Bigfoot, et cetera. We're always dealing with other stuff. So we're going to go to the break and stick with us because we'll be back on the flip side of that.
creep up them like a white mean pie in the snow. And out of black a figure born, a soldier in the sky, with a drop of blood, trying to set you free. Run for the hills, pick up your feet and let's go. We did our jobs, pick up speed, now let's move. The trees can't grow without the sun in their eyes, and we can't live if we're too afraid to die. Oh, hold on tight, you're too slow. We'll fire at the breeze that blows these thoughts through our minds. Hire only thieves to steal the thoughts from our heads.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Supernatural Substation. I'm your host, Ellen Castanio, and Bernadine is in the wings still.
Still.
Yeah. So we had a great conversation. There's a lot more I could ask Lyle. Um, even though he says he's seen ghosts, and it's just I was hoping maybe he had seen Nessie or some other kind of cryptid or whatever. So, but it was a good interview. I don't know how I think I think Bigfoot. I think it's real, but it's supernatural. These people are looking for some kind of real, physical creature, and I kind of don't feel that, you know, with so many people looking for so long.
They can will it into existence.
Right. That's my that's pretty much what I feel is that the collective thought manifestation. It's something that is supernatural and it is manifesting in that form. And it's probably because if you read back on it, all the Indian tribes of the the Northwest and some of the West, they all have accounts, even though some of the tribes were not even connected. They all have the same kind of accounts. Like in Ireland or England, when they would say there's a spirit of the well. They would have a well, that you go leave offerings by, and there was a spirit who kept the water fresh or whatever, stuff like that, like spirits at crossroads that appear in a certain form. And it's funny because, and I wanted to ask him this, but we didn't get to it. Like in England, it's all these big black cats, and that's the latest one. These overgrown looking panther things and big black dogs they've been seeing there for centuries. So we all know about that. But lately there's been this huge big black cat and other things. And you think, a lot of people say that started as somebody's pet. But if there's more of them, if there was only like one guy had a panther and he let it out or it escaped, what's it going to mate with? To make more, or is everybody seeing the same panther in Northeast England and then down on the coast? Because that's a big range for a cat. So there's all kind of stuff, like that, and the werewolves and all kind of fit into there. Because I think that's pretty much what it is, and it's this entity, whatever it is.
What about shapeshifters?
Yeah. Or berserkers, all of this stuff is across folklore. And even though we call it Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and we mostly associate it with America, and said certain regions of America, there are other things. Not just the Yeti, but there are instances in folklore. It's the same thing with one of the, the weirdest ones, I guess, or the ones that everybody said could never existed, and that's dragons, right? Every culture, even separated cultures that have never come in contact with other cultures, there's a kernel at the root of legends they have about this big thing, this dinosaur, whatever, like thing that flies in the air. And like I said, if I'm fixing a tire on the road and something that looks like, somebody comes up or something comes up, to me, it's going to be 7 foot tall. And so, it's layer upon layer of sightings. And then suddenly, and speaking about the, what they would do if we captured one, well, they'd either hunt it into extinction, right? Because we do that. That's what we've done. That's what mankind does. It displaces everything, destroys everything, kills everything. But that's why I'm like, I hope they never find it, or I hope the one that they find kills them all, because, and then they know it's for real, right? Because there's a bunch of dead, happy people. But I don't really want it. I don't want it to be found. I don't know about you, because that's what we would do. We put it in a cage.
Yeah.
And
that would traumatize me just knowing it.
Because some of these
may
things
have a family in the cave somewhere, and now they can't eat. So
yeah, I always worry about that. I always worry. I do.
Because we're Italian.
Yeah, it's like, when birds, like you see a dead bird or a squirrel, you're thinking, oh my God, there's some little squirrels, and they shouldn't have to worry about big metal objects squishing them on the ground. If it was up to me, we're the ones who really should be gone, humanity. It's just.
Well, slowly we're doing that to ourselves. So
yeah, in some areas not quick enough. But we are always the real monsters. Because when you read stories about people, and it's always these people like Asia and all this, and there was this one story about an orangutan. I think it was an orangutan that this man kept in a windowless wooden box for like 4 years because he was in either Singapore or somewhere in Thailand where it is illegal to keep these things as pets. So he had it in this box. He fed it junk food, basically. And when the authorities found out and they went to rescue the chimp, they broke open the door and he was scared. He got into a corner and the only two things that he had in there was a plastic water bottle and a straw. And these were his like security blanket things. That you see that's terrible.
Yeah.
That man that did that could conceive of that and leave that thing in there, he needs to be bred out of the human race. You know, in my opinion, what's he doing alive? Who would do that? There was another, I mean, I see him all the time in my Facebook feed. I have to just scroll by it and hide the post because it's just getting worse. It's getting,
Yeah, I don't even
I don't know
look
if
through
it's,
the news feed anymore because of that. If I see people abusing animals or whatever, I can't look at it.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I feel bad, but it stays on my mind and there's nothing I can do about it.
Me too.
So I'd rather not even look at it.
I sometimes it's good things, and you hear and so you want to go see, but most of the time it's like these really, it's depressing. I mean, they've got good whatevers, I mean, good. Some turn out good, and there's good people, but by far. So that's what I think. Like, even in, let's say over in Russia or Siberia, whatever, they found, the abominable snowman, you know, that's what we would do to it. There was a movie years and years ago. I don't know if you remember. Jeff Bridges was in it, and Karen Allen, who is the girl that played in the first Indiana Jones movies. I mean, that's it, and then off the face of the earth. But there was a movie called Starman, and Jeff Bridges was the man from space, and she's the woman who like encountered him, and the guy in the film says it. He's trying to get the government to, not go after this man, this thing, and whatever. And he said, well, what do we do? What are you talking about? We invited him here, and now you're gonna kill him? It's like invite somebody to your house and kill him when they come. And that's it. That's what we do. We've got satellites like floating outside of our galaxy and everything, and we always think, oh, they're going to come and destroy us. Well, when they come, what are we going to do? The governments are going to destroy it. It's
Right.
and that's why, Bigfoot, he can stay out there. There's
The aliens are probably standing at, wherever they are in their galaxy looking down on us like a bunch of lab rats.
yeah.
Like, what are they going to do next? Because they can't get out of the maze without hurting yourself.
It's like when I look at movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, the old one with the robot, Gort Klaatu Barada Nikto, that was this robot, and then Keanu Reeves was in like the remake of it. It's sometimes when you look at it and you look at things that are going on in the world, it's like, and I've said it, we could really use an alien invasion and bring us all together, because then we'd have something that we all, an existential threat that we all needed to fight, and hopefully Tom Cruise will show up. Yeah, I'm going to go see that movie this weekend, by the way, The Mummy.
Oh, The Mummy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like Tom Cruise. He's crazy. I'd like to do an intervention on Tom Cruise, and get him out of that Scientology, whatever, prison that he's in. But
You'd have to tranquilize him and cage him.
Yeah, and get him off the grid,
Mm-hmm.
All I need is a nice pick and a hammer, like a lobotomy right there. Boom, right. I put this right behind your eye and just think, what Scientology, But seriously, yeah, he would star in whatever it's going to be in. So, I saw Pirates last weekend. I think it was last weekend. Anyway, the weekend it came out, it was excellent. So I know you won't see them until they come on TV, but I'm just telling you, when they come down,
is Johnny Depp in it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's the last one. It's the last one of the series, and so they're all in it.
I love him.
Summer briefly, yeah. I do, but I mean, he's getting to be kind of whatever. But the Legend of Boggy Creek movie, that I watched it. I remembered when I saw it the first time, and then I watched it like later, years later on TV, and I'm like, you know,
Mhm.
what was so scary about this? You know, what was it? I mean, you know, when you've got like, you know, death coming in your room, you know, at night.
Yeah, I think
With the,
after I
you know,
seen The Exorcist at 11 years old, that traumatized me. Nothing else would scare me.
right, Boggy Creek, right? You know, who cares? I mean, you've seen, you know, I've seen, you know, whatever, Cthulhu or whatever, you know, some Lovecraftian demon. The thing is too that I have no plans about going out in the swamps of
Right.
Louisiana on your side or over here, because, well, in Slidell is like in Pearl River, Louisiana, like the gateway to the Honey Island Swamps. And if you go on the tours, people do ask, because we actually recently went on one a few months ago, and they asked, "What about the Honey Island Swamp Monster?" And the guy said, you know, that's not true. The guy, you know, he's throwing marshmallows and stuff too, and hot dogs to alligators, you know. He said that's not true, and you know, he said, but when you know it gets dark out here, and I told my daughter, I nudged her, and I said, yeah, I'd like to see him out here at night, camped, you know, somewhere. You're gonna believe anything's out there. Um, that's what it is. You're gonna believe anything is real. And frankly, I mean, I think that that woman Dana Holyfield, who, you know, whose grandfather was the one who filmed the Honey Island Swamp, uh, I don't think she's a liar. I think something's out there, but it kind of falls into that group of sort of fairy tale or fairy things and elementals and stuff that have always been here, just by other names, you know, at least in my opinion. So anyway, that's called dead air, folks.
Mhm.
So anyway, what were you doing on the break? Anyway, I know that we have a couple of things, or at least one thing that I wanted to talk about, and we have been kind of shuttling people toward the SPARS event. So I'm going to put that in. And it's meeting with the spirits. What is it? Mingling with the spirits of Beauvoir. Um, so let's see, because they have a paranormal convention that comes up in September, and Bernadine and I will both be at it. It's usually a great time, but it's also let me see, every once a month, each month prior to that, they host the Spirits of Beauvoir. Meet the Spirits, which is a weekend of active investigation or a night with the SPARS team at the site of Beauvoir, which was the last home of Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. They have one, according to their schedule, they have one coming up on June 17th. Excuse me. So if you have a daddy who's into the paranormal, you might want to contact them. There's one in July on the 15th, and then the last one is in August on the 19th. Questions, you can go to their site, SPARS paranormal.com, and click on events, and you'll have everything that you need to know if you want to meet the spirits of Beauvoir. And it's a very active place. There's been a lot of evidence collected and a lot of interaction. So all of which is a build up to the convention in September, which it is another good event. So anything else, Dean, that we've
Yeah, if you guys want to be live with us, I think, well, on the Friday night we'll be there live.
Yeah, we're going to do Facebook Live, and we're going to have it figured out where we're on YouTube as well. So, and we'll be in a Hangout on Google Hangouts. Of course, we're on the learning curve about a lot of this stuff, but you know, but we will be live for the first time. We've done a broadcast from Paracon, I think, the last couple of years, or yeah, the last 2 years. So we plan on doing it now in a different way. So and I've got some good guests that we're going to be having. So check it out. Check it all out at Stars Paranormal. And that's it. Tonight the music you've been listening to. Let's see, is the Black Angels, and the song is Dead Young Men, because today tickets went on sale for the Voodoo Experience in New Orleans, which is Halloween weekend. I think it's on the 27th, 28th, and 29th. And although I strongly feel that people should avoid New Orleans right now because of the crime, somebody wants me to go to Kent City, Michigan. No, 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 thank you. The crime is so high. I mean, there was just a report this week, unfortunately, that we have per capita, we are the murder capital of the United States. But if you're going to come down here to Voodoo, tonight you've been listening to the Black Angels, and the song was Dead Young Men, which is another good name for a band. So anyway, coming up after us is Kathy Bilski, Quantum Leap. She's going to get high, and I don't know. I really don't know I don't know if she really does get high. I've listened to it, but, I don't know if you have like a group high, or what do you do with video chat. But anyway, Quantum Leap is coming up after us. And later on, 2 a.m. actually, stay tuned for Terminus, which is the dark ambient radio show that I produce. Tonight we are taking a cue from H.P. Lovecraft, and we're going to the Mountains of Madness. So tune in for that. Dean, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, or an investigation comes up and they need your help, where can they get in touch with you?
They can email me at Bernadine, that's BERNADINE, at lspr-society.com.
That will work. And if you're looking for me, and a lot of people for different reasons, you can find me at a soon-to-be revamped website of www.elenepostania.net. You can also find me on Facebook, and be sure and stop on Facebook and like our brand new popping excellent page for the Supernatural Substation. Just search it. Like us. We were putting some really cool images and, just creepy stuff over there, and lots of good stories. And plus, we'll be announcing stuff about the show. So, tune in, go there, and join the crowd. We haven't heard from somebody tonight, though, Bernadine.
Who's that?
Can you think? And he's beginning to feel pretty neglected, and he's complaining.
Zeke.
Yeah, Zeke the zombie. He's going to be the mascot of the Supernatural Substation. Listen, he's excited. That's him, that's ordering it. That's the sound of a zombie at sporting events. Okay, let me. Only I don't know what team. Probably the Saints. It's probably a Saints fan, okay, with a paper bag on his head. Anyway, yeah, Zeke the zombie. He's our little mascot. Which, by the way, Dean, we'll have to use some sort of thing for products that we're going to be offering pretty soon. We're going to be offering, T-shirts, cups, etc. So stick around. It's getting bigger. Even if you don't tune in, you can catch us in the archives. And we'll be back next Friday night. Until then, have a great weekend. Say good night, Dean.
Night, night, all.
Good night.